In the last class, we talked about how to evaluate keywords broadly, looking at different metrics such as search volume, difficulty, click-through rates, things like that. In the second part of this module, we're actually going to be looking at how to evaluate in greater depth using tools different variants of keywords. So let's jump into how to evaluate keywords, part 2. You may recall from previous modules we were using Keyword Explorer. There's other tools that are out there. One of the more common ones is the Keyword Planner by Google. So you can kind of apply these same processes to that tool set if you're familiar with it. We primarily focused on this overview section here. Right? We were looking at the monthly volume, difficulty scores, organic click-through rates, and defined what those priority scores were for a given keyword. And the question is, let's start tying together some of these different concepts of how to organize research with some of the tools that are at our disposal. So for example, we had talked about creating this matrix and then populating this matrix with words in each cell. So here we're looking at top of the funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of the funnel, types of keyword search queries, and then breaking them out by different semantic topic groups that we might think of how Hummingbird organizes the world. And I asked this question, well, what do we do with the words in each one of these cells? Let's look at these keyword research tools and discover what we can do with them to help solve that. So if we have our seed keywords and kind of evaluate these, and we understand how to evaluate words, now we can start doing that, sort of scaling that process up. And the way we can do that is by using the Keyword Suggestions tool or similar. In this case, Keyword Explorer has the Keyword Suggestions tool. Here, if I click on this, or if I click on Keyword Suggestions over here. So let's use this as our example. Study abroad programs. I can click on the Keyword Suggestions tool, and what that does, it takes me, now you can see that it's highlighted, Keyword Suggestions. It takes me to a page that shows several other words that are semantically relevant. So here you can see, I'll kind of give you a walkthrough of this interface here. So here's the keyword suggestion we're looking at, study abroad programs. There are a couple of drop-down menus here, and then below that, all keyword suggestions. And we can see semantically similar keywords down below as we go down the page. There's a relevancy score. These 6 grade-in circles, the more grade-in circles that there are, you can see that it's more semantically relevant to the word that we've requested up here. So study abroad programs, you can see these are all highly relevant. The group keywords section allows you to group by relevancy or low or high lexical similarity. So you can kind of play around with that to kind of group things up a little bit using these relevancy scores. And then we also see the monthly volume. And if I were to go over here and click on this little eyeglass, the eyeglass would then allow me to run the query, and it would take me to a keyword overview. So over here, take me to the keyword overview for this particular word that I've selected the eyeglass on. You can export these results, and you can also add them to campaigns or lists, which we'll show in just a second. Now, how many are on this list? If I, simply by putting in a keyword and then saying keyword suggestions, well, there are 1,000 keyword examples normally when this shows up. So we have a lot of different options. And as I mentioned, you can refine these results using these drop downs. So for example, if I see study abroad programs, and let's say that I have a competitor who I know ranks for this word, okay? And I want to see maybe other words that show up similar. I could say related to keywords with similar results pages, right? Because I know that the competitor shows up in the result page. So I could select related to keywords with similar results pages and hopefully find other places where my competitor might likely show up. This one, our questions, this is another really nice one. A really great shortcut for a couple things. Let me show you what that does. So if I select our questions off of the keyword display keyword suggestions, that drop down, you notice here, what do we get? We get just question format keywords related to this topic. So we've talked before about the importance of thinking about featured snippets. Featured snippets are answering questions, informational types of searches. questions make great blog titles. They can also be other page elements like your H1s, H2s, and H3s on a page. So if you want to isolate really quickly just a bunch of, say, blog titles, you could just type in a word that you want to focus on, go to keyword suggestions, and then just say our questions and just export that CSV. And now you might have, a couple hundred different keywords related to that topic, and you can go through and isolate those that seem like they're relevant. But if you have a content writer, just throw that CSV over to them and say, if you got nothing else to write about, here's some ideas. Okay, so what do we do, right? We're trying. Again, what we have is we have a matrix of words, right, that are organized by sales funnel and organized by topic area. And my statement earlier was, let's build out a giant list for each one of those cells. Well, how do we do that? A couple different ways. I'll show you the manual way, and then we'll talk about scaling it up later on. What I can do is I can select these variants, check these boxes here, for example, if I thought these were sort of relevant words that I want to add to a list. And I can go over here and say, add to list. Right? So I can create a list, or if I have an existing list already. And the way I normally do this is I'll have one list for each cell in that matrix. Top of the funnel for a given topic area, top of the funnel for another given topic area, and just fill out lists accordingly. Then what I'll do is I'll go check out my lists. I'll actually go look at the lists that I've filled out. And that takes us to this list page. So here I show 3 different lists, and you can get some information straight away from just this view, such as how many keywords do I have in this list, right? So in this case, teach my dog to fly a spaceship list, 285 keywords are in there. What is the total volume of these words? Total volume represented by these 355 words. You have your range right there. So if these were identical sizes of lists, I could say this one has more potential volume than this one does. So just straight away I can see that. I can see the average difficulty score. So maybe, this one is slightly less difficult on average than this one. So you can get some of those metrics to just kind of quickly assess. Imagine you line up everything in that matrix and say, which cells of this matrix that we've developed represents the highest total volume and maybe the lowest average difficulty. You could just spot that very easily in that grid by looking at it in those terms. Okay, so let's go ahead and double click down into the study abroad list and actually look at those list features themselves. Again, what are we trying to do? We're trying to isolate several of the best variants of our word. So we targeting study abroad, and now what I want to do is I want to dig in and say, well, what specifically are the best words based upon these metrics that I now understand? If I click on this list link, so here inside the study abroad list, you can start seeing the way that this, what kinds of opportunities we have associated with this. So we see a distribution of monthly volume, right? We have 355 keywords, and here's the 355 keywords listed on this scale just by where the volume sort of peaks. We can see that, well, there's probably a little bit of low volume material here. We can see the SERP features that exist within this list. So we can see that there's a lot of ads, there's a lot of featured snippets, there's some star reviews, etc. So we could go through, and if we wanted to click on learn more about SERP features, we go in here and see what kinds of SERP features are showing up here. Difficulty scores, we see that organized here, right? So how many keywords have a difficulty score between 41 and 60, 174, we can get a little bit of a distribution. Same way with the distribution of our organic click-through rate figures. Down below, there's some filtering that we can do. And then below that, we have all 355 keywords listed. Okay, so now you can kind of see that. So if we want to zoom in on this a little bit, this is our quick overview. So I can say, comparing just without having to even think very hard, I can say, well, this concept has a slightly difficult, kind of impacted click-through rate aspect, and it looks like the click-through rate is being impacted primarily by, our feature snippets and our paid ads. Okay. If I saw that there was a big spike in videos, for example, or maybe a big spike in local packs, or a big spike in image packs, then that could maybe tell me something about where this word or group of words falls within the sales funnel and what kinds of content are being consumed there. Maybe that can give me some content ideas, for example. So kind of interesting. If we look down below, just these results, right? So what do I get for each result? Well, here's all the keywords I have in this list. So these are things that I've selected someplace else and put in the list. I get the monthly volume score. I get a difficulty score. I get an organic click-through rate score. I can add my own score to it as well to sort of adjust the priority. So I can add my own score, and that will manipulate the priority score a little bit. And if I wanted to, I could add my URL and see where I rank, if at all, within these results, within all these different keyword results. But here's the thing we can do, right? So I have my matrix. I have within that matrix each cell. I've created a list for each one of those cells. And now what I want to do is I want to say, what are the best, quote unquote, best variants amongst all these words I've placed in there? Hopefully I've got, 400 to 500 keywords in there. So I'm looking at a lot of different variants. And I can do that by using these filters. So let's filter these down. Here I say, show me only words that have between, basically that have some kind of defined volume. I can say only things that have a difficulty score of 50 or less. Only things that have an organic click-through rate of 80% or more. And what does that mean? It means out of those 355 words, 4 words meet that criteria. And then I can sort those maybe by difficulty. I often sort them by difficulty just because I sort of want to see what are the easiest ones maybe to try to rank for. So I can sort it by difficulty or maybe sort it by monthly volume if that's your preference. And here, MSU study abroad programs. Okay, well, that's a branded term, so maybe that doesn't apply to me, but Study Abroad 101. Best study abroad companies, Study Abroad America. Maybe I can look at these and say, well, now I can do that evaluation. This one has this much monthly volume and a difficulty score of 38 and organic click-through rate of 100%. That's pretty good compared to the other ones. So all of a sudden I have at least one variant, and the more keywords I put in a list like this, the more likely I'm going to find additional variants that I might be able to add to that piece of content as a related topic to help the search engine understand what the value of that page is.